Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy, Mac. Joining me today is my good old buddy, old friend, old pal, Mikey McNuggets of Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. What's going on, Mikey?
Doing good, man. The Cavs are 52-10, so how can you complain? And I think it's funny. We had Marcus Morris on UCSS today, who had a cup of tea with the Cavs last season. And just real quick takeaways, because I'm not sure if you listened to the interview. If you haven't, I recommend go listen to it back. He called the Cavs "we" the entire time. Said he was sad he never got the call back to join the team again. He intentionally did not sign, hoping a team like Cleveland would sign him as a buyout guy once the deadline passed. And secondly, that dude hates JB Bickerstaff. Like, just straight up hates JB Bickerstaff and makes you appreciate a little bit more. No disrespect to JB because he's doing an incredible job in Detroit. Makes you appreciate a little more what a coaching change can do in some players' eyes, even if in the grand scheme of things, the roster hadn't changed. So just a fascinating thing. So it's all good vibes in Cavs world today.
Make sure you guys go check that out. Honestly, I have not checked out the full interview myself. I listened to the first couple of minutes, but I got to say, I mean, you look at the fact that he can still obviously contribute, right? Mm-hmm. He did that. He didn't necessarily get enough time with Cleveland, in my opinion, towards the end of the regular season and then into the postseason. And we really saw him kind of carry the Cavs in one of those games. I think it was game 5. In which
25. 10 of 13.
He was the major reason, along with Evan Mobley, obviously, why the team was able to stay with Boston in that final game. But yeah, make sure you guys go check that out. Mike, you know why you're here, man. I just told you before I press record, and that is to have a discussion centering around whether or not DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus or Dean Wade, hell, even Isaac Okoro, who makes the most sense in the starting unit. We're going to talk about what makes the most sense for the rest of the regular season, what makes the most sense situationally, and what makes most sense against Boston. Let's start off with the regular season. I believe we have, 20 games left on this season. 20 games left. You can assume that the Cavaliers are probably going to start prioritizing rest more and more as the season comes to a close. Kenny Atkinson, he's going to do what he wants to do. But in your opinion, how would you like to see the regular season play out in regards to that starting 3 role?
Listen, I did not come prepared with numbers because we agreed on this topic 37 seconds before we hit record. So I don't have all the advanced net ratings off all that stuff. I'm just going to tell you what my eyes see at almost all these home games. Unless they're playing Boston, and when we get to that part of it, my answer will change, Matt. Mm-hmm. I don't think who starts matters. They have been phenomenal with Max Strus in the starting lineup. I think with the 2 bigs, Max Strus does the best job of the 3 candidates. Playing offensively off those 2, he's the best screen navigator in terms of offensively getting open, setting guys up, utilizing what Evan and Jarrett do better than the other bigs on the roster, which is get in the way of the guys trailing. Max Strus, he's an incredible cutter. And he gives, and I said this on another podcast, and I still don't know how to articulate it better than this. You need one wild card on the court.
Okay.
And you kind of know what you have in Jarrett and Evan. And you, for the most part, there's a variance of how good that Darius and Donovan will be on any given night. But you know what you're going to get with those 2. And then Max is the wild card. If Max comes out and hits 6 threes, no one's surprised. And if Max goes 0 for 7, it's kind of surprised. And you obviously don't want that. But he brings that energy defensively. Donovan said last night post-game, if I say I got the best guy on the other team, Max yells at me. Max says, no, I got the best guy on the other team. Picks him up 94 feet. Is he the world's greatest defender? No. Is he absolutely serviceable in most matchups? Yes. And I just like the energy he brings. So outside of the Boston matchup, frankly, Mac, I don't think the conversation should be who should be starting. It's who should be closing, and that's a whole different conversation. But I'm not getting caught up in the minutia. They've been excellent with Max in the starting 5, and unless it's Boston, I'm not going to change it.
I think that is fair. I am of the same mindset, honestly, Mikey. I think we have heard Max say himself. We've heard Kenny Atkinson elaborate many times on this same subject. A lot of these guys just do not care who starts as long as they're getting enough minutes. I think that's what they truly care about. Obviously, the closing lineups, we have seen DeAndre Hunter included in the last couple of games in regards to the closing unit. And I think that it's paid dividends, right? You have seen games where Mobley has been in foul trouble. Jarrett has either not been as effective as you would want him to be, or Kenny just decided to roll with Evan Mobley at the 5, and Hunter is either playing the 3 or the 4, which it has looked really good against a number of opponents. The Cavaliers are 10-0 since acquiring DeAndre Hunter, and in the 20 possessions that Cleveland the Glass has the core 4 plus DeAndre Hunter together, they have a point differential of plus 20. I mean, they're
Did you
doing
say 20 possessions?
Yes, that is
That's
what it
it?
is tracked at. I mean, I don't know how accurate that is, but that is what Cleaning the Glass has it at.
They're good. It's a good
possessions.
website.
Yes. And that is with him playing at the small forward. Keep in mind, it is probably going to look a little bit different in the lineups with him at the power forward position. But if you're playing him in that core 4 unit plus Hunter, that is what it is right now. And the numbers have been really good. It's the same thing for Max Strus. The advanced stats and the metrics and whatnot really come to Max's aid. It may not always be aesthetically pleasing. People may not like the height disadvantage that Max sees at times. And when I think of that, what better play to really show you just how much of a size disadvantage he could be at than that Bam versus Max possession, that isolation last night that we saw. But even in that,
you got to stop.
Yeah, even with Bam, it's we can call it a stop, but
Bam lost the ball himself, but Max gets credited with the 4th turnover. So
there you go.
Don't take it away from him. I'm not sure how much he impacted it, but don't take it away from Max.
Yeah. What I appreciate about Max is that, as you said, he's a wild card. He is one of those guys that can impact the game in a number of ways, even when he is not shooting the ball well. And he actually has been shooting the ball well as of late. He's over 40+% over his last 5 or 6 games, which is exactly what you want to see. And it's coming on volume from Max. Now, that is the regular season. I don't think you or I really care about who gets the starting nod for the 20 or so games that we have left on the season, as long as all of these guys are playing justifiable minutes and everybody stays healthy. When we get to the playoffs, that is an entirely different conversation. Now, one could assume that this team is probably going to have to face off against the Boston Celtics at some point, most likely the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that is probably going to be the hurdle that they are eventually going to have to climb. But before we get to that, are you going into the postseason with DeAndre Hunter or Max or anybody else starting no matter who the opponent is, or is it going to be matchup based?
I think it's more matchup based. Boston's the one where I feel pretty strongly DeAndre has to be in the starting lineup for, and we can talk about that in a second when we get there. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is matchup based. If you told me before Max came back from injury that you're going to have the option to play Max at the 3, Dean at the 3, or DeAndre at the 3 in the starting lineup, I thought Wade on paper would have been the perfect fit because you don't need to run any offense for him. He's a really good defender. He gives you the size. He doesn't need any volume offensively, and he helps all the rebounding metrics. So on paper, that fits. But I've just really liked what I've seen from Max with that starting 5. And when you have smaller guys, and this is the advantage of having both Jarrett and Evan on the floor together with Max. If you have smaller guys, that's okay against most teams. Once again, Boston being the exception. But against most teams, if they do get beat on the perimeter, the other team still has to finish over one of the 2 bigs who are most likely going to be hanging around the rim. One of the 2 will most likely be hanging around the rim to provide some sort of protection if they get beat on the perimeter, which is why I'm not as concerned about the lack of height with Max, Donovan, and Darius as a trio. Now against Boston, who spreads you out completely, that's where I changed my opinion. That's where DeAndre comes into play, because I saw, and I was sitting next to Jason Lloyd when Boston beat the Cavs here last month, the last time the Cavs lost. And in the 3rd quarter, they ran the same play 3 times. Max got switched on to Porzingis 3 times in a row, and Strus fouled Porzingis on 3 straight possessions. And next thing you know, Strus was on the bench in foul trouble, unable to play for the next 8 minutes. So I changed my opinion then. But in most scenarios, unless a team is absolutely crushing an individual matchup, I feel pretty confident with Max doing enough to keep guys in front of him on the perimeter. And if he gets beat, or if a team tries to post him up because he's only 6'4", 6'5", as opposed to 6'7", 6'8", whatever, they still have to score not only over Max, but over the outstretched arms of Jarrett or Evan. So I'm more matchup dependent, minus Boston. When it comes to Boston, it's got to be DeAndre.
Okay, so I think that's completely fair, right? You look at the New Yorks, you look at hell, even Detroit. If the Cavaliers, if some by some chance the Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons have to face off, you look at teams like that, and you're still going max. I think that that speaks volumes about the faith and confidence that you have in him, and I think it is justifiable. He is a connective piece of tissue.
Mhm.
He is not a guy who requires a lot of touches. He's a very, very good off-ball movement type of player. He's excellent as a cutter, doesn't get enough love as a rebounder. That is where he is actually
Or
impressed
passer,
me.
by the way.
Yes. Really, really high level facilitation out of him that you would not have necessarily expected that. And I'll be candid with you, Mikey. I did not necessarily realize that that was part of his tool set while he was with Miami. When he got here, I'm like, okay, we got this movement shooter. He'll be great as a catch and shoot option. But then he starts doing all this off ball shit. And I'm like, on ball shit. And I'm like, okay, this is
Yeah.
another guy that, if you're without Darius Garland, if you're without Donovan Mitchell or Ty Jerome, you can turn to Max Strus as an emergency ball handler. And not only that, he is fully capable of getting Darius, Donovan, Ty, plus, off ball looks themselves, which is another faucet to this offense that I think can really, truly take things to the next level. Now, obviously, you are going to be seeding something on the defensive end, but as long as Max Strus can hold his own, you genuinely feel confident about having him out there alongside the core four. But
Can I mention one thing on that real quick, Mac?
sure.
You mentioned Detroit. I got 2 points with Strus because I think this is in the big picture. A lot of people are missing this part of it.
Sure.
He's not a negative defender. If you go back to when they played Detroit, when they were home, Detroit was wearing the black uniforms. I forget the date. He picked up Cade Cunningham full court. And Cade still had like 28, 30 points in that game, but he took 26 shots. And Strus just hounded him the whole way. And if you're going to have a guy pick up someone 94 feet and hound him, I don't want Darius doing it. I don't want Donovan doing it. I don't want DeAndre doing it. It affects the other team's offense. And even if he's not getting steals, it just puts wear and tear on Cade. In a 7-game series, you may not think that it's that much impact, but look how the Cavs shot last night, 3 and 4. I know there's more days off in the playoffs, but in the 4th game of a series, in the 2nd round of the playoffs, when you already played 4 or 5 in high intensity minutes, like that wears you down. And if he can take the best player out and make him work a little harder, that's a plus. And also, Strus the streaky shooter.
Mhm.
Strus has said, well, let me go. DeAndre has said specifically, I don't care if I start or whatnot. He had the most bench points in the league in Atlanta. He's been incredibly offensively efficient scoring off the bench here in Cleveland. Strus has said he likes to warm up, get right on the court, and keep going. Like when he wants to start hot, get hot. That's why the Cavs run plays for him early, often. I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but I would bet he's in the top 3 for most first shots taken in the game when Kenny draws up the ATO or their first play, whatever you want to call it. A lot of them are to Strus. Why? Because he needs to get in a rhythm. And if he's coming off the bench, I think it's harder for Strus to get his rhythm. And when he's not making shots, he's obviously not nearly as effective as a player. So let him start the game against everyone but Boston. Let him start the game, try and get in that rhythm early. And if you get good max in the first quarter, the Cavs are damn near unbeatable.
I think that is a good point. Now, to your point, he has held Cade Cunningham in 2 matchups this season to 8 of 19, which is good for 42.1%. That's a great number, right? That is a great number when you're talking about isolation defense, and Max just does not get enough credit in that regard. I think the other point that you made about him needing to get those early touches to get into a rhythm. You have actually seen that the last couple of games where he's knocked down a triple or two on one of the first or second possessions of the game. And game flow kind of dictates how many minutes he gets, because Max is never on this team. Max is probably never going to be a guy past this season that's going to get more than 27, 28 minutes in a game. And I think that is perfectly fine with how Kenny has balanced out these rotations. But yeah, against every other opponent, Max is great. Against Boston, I have to roll with my guy, DeAndre Hunter. And I guess since we're here now, if you had to boil it down to a couple of different reasons, why does DeAndre Hunter get the starting nod over Max Strus or Dean Wade against the Boston?
Boston likes to hunt mismatches and like to spread you out, which negates your ability to help. Because let's just say, for example, they switch Tatum, or Tatum gets a switch with Darius Garland. He goes one-on-one. Your big helps. Well, they have 4 really good 3-point shooters standing around. And you'd almost rather have Tatum go one-on-one on Garland for a 2 than kicking out to a wide open White, Holiday, Brown, or Porzingis for 3. So it's hard to help. So you need less help. It's one less guy that you have to help on in any kind of switch. I feel confident. Not that he's going to lock down Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, whoever, but he can make him take a tough shot. And against really good offensive players, you have to hope your defensive principles can force them into a shot they either don't want to take or a shot they want to take with a good contest. And because of his 7'2" wingspan, because the fact he's strong as an ox, because the fact he's 6'8" to begin with, it's tough to get a good look over him. All the defensive metrics back it up. I saw a tweet today, and I'll see if I could pull it up real quick, that since the All-Star break, he has the best field goal percentage against, or like the lowest field goal percentage against in the league. I'll have the tweet for you in 1 second.
Yeah, he's been awesome in that regard. He has been a key piece why Cleveland has limited their opponents to the second lowest field goal percentage in the NBA, and I think the 8th lowest three-point percentage since he's been acquired.
I found the stat. This is from Stat Defender. Since the All-Star break, with at least 80 total field goals defended, opponents are shooting 33.3% against DeAndre Hunter. That is the best mark in the National Basketball League since the All-Star break. So you got to put your best defenders on the court against the best offensive players, especially when Tatum's 6'8", Brown's 6'5", 6'6", and your guards are small. He's another person that can help with length contest. Size does matter, Mac. And this is an instance where that saying becomes true on a basketball court as well.
Yeah, so to your point, he has held Jaylen Brown to 2 of 5. He's held Jason Tatum to 1 of 5 this season. Now, these guys are superstars, right? They're going to make shots no matter who you put on them, but making life difficult on them, making sure that they have a good contest in front of them on almost every possession is key. And to the point about Darius Garland being switched upon by Jason Tatum and company, Darius has actually fared pretty well up into that last game, right? He's still holding him to 10 of 26, which is 38.5% from the field across 4 different matchups. I take my chances on that switch because Tatum just takes a lot of difficult shots anyways, but it's still not enviable. Boston is a team, as you know, that loves to switch everything 1 through 5. They spread you out. They can play 1 through 5, or they can spread the floor out. You know, everybody can shoot, especially Al Horford out there. I don't get it. Yeah. Al Horford always plays well against Cleveland.
He kills Cleveland. It makes no sense. He kills them every time.
I mean, it almost feels like Al Horford impacts the game more against Cleveland than Kristaps Porzingis does. It's so weird to me, but I don't know. I digress. All I know is that DeAndre Hunter is a perfect 10-0 since joining the Cleveland Cavaliers. And regardless if he starts, regardless if he comes off the bench, he is always somebody that's ready to play. And Mikey, before we get out of here, one thing that I have really, really appreciated about DeAndre Hunter's presence is just frankly the ability to create on the wing. I feel like we have not had a true wing, like guys 6'8", 6'9", who can actually go out there and create his own shot. Is there anything else in this game that has been impressive, or something that you didn't quite see before he was acquired?
I mean, he's shooting. He missed all his threes last night, so it dropped from 60% to 55%. I didn't know he was that good of a 3-point marksman. And obviously, I'm sure it'll come down. He shot 40% before coming here, but I wasn't as surprised with the shot creation stuff, because anytime you watched Atlanta, and then when you dug into the advanced analytics when they traded for him, he was in the 92nd percentile in post-up points per possession. His passing numbers were non-existent in Atlanta, which tells me, okay, Atlanta gave him the ball and said, go, get a bucket, score. And as soon as you watch the highlights, or as soon as you watch an Atlanta game when Trae Young wasn't on the court and that second unit was operating, DeAndre was the one generating a lot of those good looks. He's just smoother than I thought he was. And he's one of those guys, Mac, that in person is all of 6'8", and his arms are all of 7'2". There are so many guys, including some on the Cavs, I won't call you out, but you know who I'm talking to, who are not their real listed height. DeAndre, trust me, is all of 6'8". His arms are legitimately 7'2", 7'3" in terms of his wingspan. And when you see a guy with that size stand next to some other guys who are listed much taller, who aren't actually that tall, it makes you appreciate wings with size even more, because the Cavs did not have that prior to DeAndre getting here. I'll just put it that way.
Mikey McNuggets, everybody. Thanks for joining the show on such short notice again, man. You guys know where to catch Mikey at. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Ultimate Cavalier Show. I mean, this guy is doing a little bit of everything. Anything else you want to plug, man?
Yeah, I have my own YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. We're going to be doing some extra side content with videos that we can't post on UCSS, but I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company like Tegna, so if you two want to sue me, good luck, Tegna. So it's at Mike Lucas Sports. Mac, pleasure as always, my friend.
Go Cavs.